If you've ever dreamed of socking old Hitler on the jaw, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Podcast of Champions. I'm your host, the immortal Lord Deathman. And today we are throwing our mighty shields at Captain America, the first Avenger, the final solo film of Phase 1 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This episode is a part of an ongoing series exploring the MCU in chronological release order, diving deep into the origin stories, the triumphs, the missteps, and all of the larger narrative seeds that have been planted along the way. Before we get started with the conversation proper, I just want to let you know that you can follow us on X and on Facebook. And of course, you can catch our video versions right here on YouTube. You can also join the conversation on our message board at sakar.freeforums.net, where we discuss the canon and debate all the memes and all of that other great stuff. And finally, spoiler alert, we'll be discussing everything in this film and its connections to later entries in the MCU. So consider yourself warned at this point. All right. With that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our panel, starting with Merv. How are you doing today? Are you ready to talk some MCU?
Well, I'm doing fantastic, and I am ready.
Awesome. And Taylor, how's it going for you today?
It's going great.
We also have the Grandmaster. You ready to throw the shield around?
Absolutely.
Indeed. And last, but certainly not least, never time displaced, but always lovely and graceful, we have Loki's mom. How are you doing today?
Very lovely and very graceful.
Outstanding. Good to hear your voice today. All right, with introductions out of the way, our powerful panel is now going to jump into the discussion proper. We're going to do a first round of quick impressions to kind of jog our memories about the film and kind of get the overall feel for what it was like on release day when we actually caught this. And keep in mind, this movie was right before the Avengers, so I think it was the last solo origin story before we got the big team up. That was the one that came right before this one. So I am going to start with quick impressions with you, Grandmaster. Take it away. What are your overall impressions of this movie?
It's my favorite Phase 1 movie besides the Avengers. So out of the 5 we have and will discuss today, this is my favorite movie. I absolutely love the feel of the movie. When I saw it first time, I saw it after I saw the Avengers. That's true for all Phase 1 movies, but when I saw this for the first time, my first thought was, man, this feels a lot like The Rocketeer. Little did I know at that moment that the director of this movie was also the director of The Rocketeer. So, yeah, when I found that out, it totally made sense. And I get why Marvel Studios went for him, because I think they wanted that vibe and they got it. And I just love this movie. There's not much wrong with it. I know it's often considered the weakest Captain America movie. I don't think so. Because as an origin story, I think it's great. Even the weird small body under Chris Evans's head, I like it too. But yeah, overall, the whole story, the whole movie, I love it. Red Skull, everything. It's just great.
Yeah, it is really great fun. And for my money, it's really the entry still to this day in the franchise that has the most heart, to kind of make that cliched observation. It's still the one with the most fighting spirit, if you will. But yes, moving on to you, Taylor. Quick impressions. Captain America, the first Avenger.
Well, as you noted, this was the last solo movie before the big team up. The previous movie, Thor, the end credit scene led directly into this movie, which is something that Marvel has kind of forgotten how to do in recent years. And of course, the end credit scene of this movie leads straight into the Avengers, so it was all very organized. But I absolutely love this movie. When we get to the deep dive, I will have a lot of good things to say, and don't think I'll have anything bad to say about it, because it's just a real gem.
Yeah, it certainly is a winner, but there's quite a bit to unpack. So I'm looking forward to your deep dive analysis. But for now, I'm going to keep on moving with quick impressions. Merv, let's get your take. Bucky Barnes, Peggy Carter, Johann Schmidt, Howard Stark. I mean, the character list goes on and on. Lots of stuff happens in this movie, and I'd love to get your sort of out of the box impression of this is.
This movie is fantastic. I agree with Grandmaster. Outside of the Avengers film, this is jumped up to my favorite, especially Phase One film. Probably possibly even favorite origin story of any of the MCU superheroes. Like even the ones that come after this. Like this might be my favorite origin, like straight up origin story. The ones that are just that. Love the World War II vibes. The cast of supporting characters is one of the best in the MCU. Definitely up to this point, I think. It is incredibly deep. The amount of characters that are introduced and
Yeah.
even the ones that are like really fleshed out, like Peggy and Bucky and especially Steve. I mean, you leave this movie like loving Steve for who he is, and that's the whole point. Everything ties back to him. It's just a fantastic movie. The World War II set piece works excellently, I thought, and it leads into the Avengers, which is another fantastic one. But yeah, really love this movie. Don't have enough good things to say about it.
Yeah, right there with you. I can tell this is going to be like a tense and controversial review. All right. Guys, give me something to work with here. But yeah. Jumping over to Loki's bomb, lots of stuff goes on in this movie. It's got the Howling Commandos in it, Project Rebirth. Do you think you would have seen yourself signing up for Project Rebirth?
I'm sorry, Project. What was that last question?
Rebirth. That's the name of the super soldier experiment
Oh,
that turns
Project
Steve
Rebirth.
into Captain
I
America.
thought you said
Yeah.
Project Blue Book. So what's that? Kinda,
I think
but
the book associated with the project was actually Brown, so we're both off.
uh, do- well, my first impressions is I really like everybody else here. I loved it. I mean it sets the tone, I think, for the next movie, The Avengers, and kind of going forward. Even though Iron Man was sort of started out as the template, I think then this movie came along and Steve Rogers just eclipsed Tony Stark. I'm sorry, it's because his goodness and everything. The one thing that I really love about this movie is like close to the opening scenes where Red Skull is going in for the Tazerac in the Norwegian temple or church, and he says the line, "Well, while the Fuhrer is searching for trinkets in the desert, I found the real." And to me, that was a direct allusion to Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, if you can imagine, while this story is going on in on this side of World War II, Indiana Jones is in the desert out in Egypt and fighting Nazis too. So I think there was kind of like that little, just a little almost link up there, but not quite. So I really appreciated it. And I also want to know why in the world Joe Johnston hasn't directed any more movies after that. I don't know if whatever happened to him, but yeah, he did a really excellent job. I was very impressed with it.
Indeed. Maybe he just thought that was his crowning achievement and decided to step
Yeah,
away
he's a Citizen Kane. I don't know, but
without any chance of artistic decline. He was like, I'm just going to go the way of the Beatles. But uh, yeah, it's just really a fantastic movie, and there are some minor nits that I might have with it along the way, but they certainly don't amount to anything that would take away anyone's enjoyment of this film. So I'm going to start going around the table and trying to get some deep dive analysis of the film. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. Tell me, where this fits for you in the overall sort of MCU hierarchy, if you can. Grandmaster, I'm going to ask you to start the conversation. I mean, does this film really work? There's sci-fi, there's kind of adventure, there's a war movie going on here. It's a period piece. They really had a lot to juggle in this origin story. How do you think they pulled it off?
I think they pulled it off very well, and they did that by focusing on Steve Rogers as a character and his arc. You say there's a war movie going on. Well, is there? The war is actually montaged in like 3 minutes, and a few action pieces around that montage. Because the first half of the movie is basically Steve Rogers becoming Captain America, and the second part of the movie is him in action against, yeah, finding Bucky and then losing Bucky and then saving the day. Uh, there's not much, for me at least, not much of a war movie going on. If there's a nitpick, that is one. The action in World War II, fighting Hydra, is reduced to a few set pieces and montage. Um, the other nitpick is I don't need the epilogue where he wakes up in uh, 2010
Times Square.
New York City and listening to a baseball game that was already played while he was still awake. I don't think Shield would make a mistake if they make such an elaborate um, plot or how to say elaborate ruse to ease him in. I think they would do their homework a little bit better. Uh, um, so I would have preferred if that was not in the movie. I guess why it was in the movie, but uh, yeah, I didn't need that. Overall, those are really my nitpicks. They're they're not. There's one that they are not really. Sometimes somebody can pick up the tesseract with their bare hands or with a glove on. Sometimes they cannot. It's stuff like that that is minor nitpicks and
Yeah, now we're
it,
getting that's getting technical, and I
yeah,
think
exactly.
it may not be a straight war film, as in Platoon or something like that, with a
Yeah,
bunch of big war scenes and set pieces, but the film does try to stay to keep you conscious that it is happening during World War
yeah,
II, even though we're
absolutely.
not seeing straight up Nazis.
It's set in that period. That's quite obvious, of course, with the power of the gods, to quote Mr. Schmidt. It also has a fantastic element about it, and I think it works really well altogether. It's grounded enough to be believable and fantastic enough to know that this opens up a whole universe, and yeah. But I really like this movie from the first moment when they go into the ice and find the shield, and then they go to the scene in Norway, and then you see Steve getting into the U.S. Army. Um, yeah, I really love that how they take their time and not rush that. I mean, they build his relationship with Peggy. They show that he is all about heart and mind, and not about being a physical strong man, but he's a mentally strong man, and he has a big heart, and that is what defines Steve Rogers. And they take their time to really show that, and I love that. I mean, if all the guest stars that were mentioned, we have Tommy Lee Jones in this movie. When I saw this movie for the first time, I was like, "Whoa, they really got everybody in there." And of course, breakout stars like Haley Atwell and Sebastian Stan, and even Natalie Dormer is in there for a hot minute, especially a hot minute for Steve, by the way. So it's yeah, they have a lot of famous people now and famous people from before in this movie, and it's filled with stars, and you can see the love they have for the source material. They even have the Captain America comics in there, and yeah. And may I say something? I still think to this day that the theme or the score for Captain America: The First Avenger is one of the best in the whole MCU.
Yeah,
I,
it's the
I love
same.
that theme, and I have to mention it. The chorus line musical number. I love that.
The Star
I
Spangled
absolutely
Banner.
love that. The Star Spangled Man with a Plan. I absolutely love that, and I think it's corny, but in a good way. And uh, yeah, I can totally see that happening in real life. So in that period. So yeah, well done. Um, Although I was not aware they had like few screens where you can have like in the 1940s where you can have like CGI planes flying on there in the background of a chorus line. But okay, that's again the suspension of disbelief you have to have, or something, or my lack of knowledge also possible. Um, yeah. So a few minor nitpicks. Overall, it's great, and yeah, Hugo Weaving as Red Skull, he steals the show for me. He is awesome. You believe that he's evil, and yeah, um, that that's great. And let's not forget Mr. Erskine, Stanley Tucci.
Yeah.
How can you hate on a movie where there's Stanley Tucci in it? I mean, he's the most awesome. And you can go on by dropping names, and they're all in this movie, and you're like, how did they manage to balance this all? Well, they did. And I think also that's the reason why they didn't put like much of a war scene while Steve is becoming Captain America in the war, because yeah, they had to let the character shine and not so much the action. And I think they did that very well.
Yeah. It really is an incredible movie with very few missteps, if anything. The only thing, and I mean the only thing, that has ever bothered me about this film is Captain America's uniform. And I feel like at certain moments they get close to getting it right, but
Mm.
it never looks like a really awesome fit on Chris until we get a couple movies down the line. Probably not until Winter Soldier, but we owe Alan Silvestri a debt of gratitude for that incredible score behind the movie, because he's able to mix these sort of contemporary score superhero beats with something that sounds like it might have come out of the period of World War II in terms of like
Exactly.
triumphant kind of march music. So yeah, it's that score has always been a favorite of mine too. So I'm glad that you mentioned it there. But yeah, it really is an amazing movie. Was there anything else you wanted to add about it, Grandmaster? Or
No, I mean I can go on, but there are other people who also want to talk about this, so
there are other
I
people
will
who
let
want
them.
to gush about it endlessly.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Indeed. So yep,
and I'm still hoping for like a rant like last week from Taylor. So I'm
right.
clocking out now.
Yep, yep. But Loki's mom, I'm going to turn to you, and maybe we can mine the critical elements of this film together. People like to use the term, and I'd be maybe dating myself here. Not a term I'm very fond of, but they call it the female gaze. When there's a little beefcake injected into these
Hmm.
things, I'm not sure if any of that had any appeal to you in this particular
Oh,
movie,
no.
but just curious to see if it enhanced the experience for you.
Yes, lots and lots of oodles of dice-looking men. Um, and I think Haley Atwell, she get other than the chorus girls who are kind of always in the background. Haley Atwell, she gets to be the only female in that group of guys, so she shines too. I think she's, as far as female gaze goes, is looking at a female. She's very much in charge of herself. She doesn't take guff off the guys. She's very confident. She has to her role in this whole operation is not as great as the males, but she nonetheless she contributes to the overall plot and the theme, um and that's why she became such a popular character. I mean, she got her own TV show and everything out of it, which was really very good. I enjoyed it, and she's being brought back. As far as the male gaze goes, my gosh, you got Steve Rogers, and that CGI was amazing. I mean, you buy it right off the bat that Chris Evans's head is on that little skinny body. How in the world they did that, I don't know. Movie magic, but you don't even think about it. I mean, you buy the character. He looks like that all the way. I mean, the way he moves and everything, it's very natural. It's not, you don't see any flaws in it. And then, of course, when they do the transformation to Chris Evans' own beautiful body, it is really spectacular. So yeah, and as far as that goes, a lot of other great guys in there. Neil McDonough, um, to me,
Sebastian Stan, of
he was
course,
just,
it's a very handsome
yes,
cast for sure.
absolutely. But he just really, they all look like the characters, like you think they would. So that was a big plus. I already mentioned the little allusion to Indiana Jones, which I thought was so clever, and I'm not sure how many people got it, but that when I first heard it, that when I first seen the movie and heard that line, it really just charmed me to no end. Um, what are some of the minuses I can think of? Yeah, I think the ending where Steve Rogers. I guess they may have done that after they had already shot the movie. I don't know, but it was sort of, he's in a fake hospital room, and then they got like stage
Really,
set
that's
outside
now we've
I
got
mean, he would
two
figure that out.
champions who really didn't like that after credit scene. Wow.
It's not that I didn't like it. I didn't like how they did it. I just, like you said, I think Grandmaster pointed out that it was just, why would they do something like that? Try to break it in easy. But anyway, then when he runs out and then he's on 21st century Times Square and he's trying to set, but and it kind of, at that point it's okay. But um, let's see. I really can't think of too many minuses. I think. Oh, I really just can't think of any. I'm
All
going to
right.
be
Well,
honest about it.
we
Other
look
than,
if
yeah.
we if there's nothing to mind critically, then we have to move on to what we loved about the film. What stood out for you in particular that was great about this film?
The tone of it, like you say, it's been pointed out that it really looks like that 1940s feel, although more so in um um a Hollywood type of, the way you would have seen movies in Hollywood that were made in the 40s. So I think that was brought out, or that was helped set the tone for that era and why we're there, and why this particular story is set there. One little thing, maybe this is a criticism. I don't know that Hitler would have let Red Skull continue like he did, because Red Skull, his whole intention is kind of, you don't see it, and the whole Hydra element is not brought out that much. But his goal is to take over, of course, the whole world. He doesn't care about Hitler or what Hitler's
Yeah.
trying to do. He's going to take over Hitler when he gets to that point. So I don't know that the Fuhrer would have allowed Red Skull to continue after he annihilates his staff who go in there. But so that's kind of weird. It doesn't really feel right. But anyway,
It is
it's
weird,
huh?
but it actually is a pretty well established trope of science fiction. If Hitler is in a science fiction story, he's
Hmm.
going to give his subordinates all the money in the world and all the time in the world to just like do crazy experiments that are
Yeah,
not in his interest. It happens in Indiana Jones, it happens in Star Trek,
yeah,
it
that's
happens
true.
in the MCU. Hitler's just not good with budgeting, and he's never there when the artifact is like dug up. He wasn't on his game.
Yeah, but I don't know if Hitler found out that five of his top generals or whatever had been turned into blue dust. I don't know that he would have been. Maybe he doesn't find out that part. We don't know the backstory there. Um, oh my god, the acting, of course. You had Hugo Weaving. Like I said, he was just, not only that, just with his own face. They didn't
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
do the. I mean, he's evil just with his own acting, and then of course in the I'm not sure if he lost weight or whatever for that part, but he's just all bones in his face and angular, and um,
It's great makeup.
yeah, beady eyes, and then of course the Red Skull. But again, that was very convincing. It didn't look weird or um, I guess the war scenes and whatnot. And I may as well mention it now. And Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. I mean, this is, I think, the first time I'd ever seen Sebastian Stan in a movie, and really just fell in love with him. He became one of my favorite characters after that, as far as MCU goes, and actor too. Just I really
Yeah,
liked him as
and
an
right from the very beginning,
actor.
I was a little disappointed that it wasn't young Bucky. Like I was hoping he'd get the domino mask and just be on top of a jet fighter.
No, he just comes
Something
off
like
as a straight GI, and
yeah.
because he's Steve Rogers' friend, then he's pulled into the whole adventure that way. Yeah, I, I do like that had all the character actors, Toby Jones, and then Tommy Lee Jones. All these characters really contributed to it, and they didn't overshadow the story. Yet they really enhanced the character, because Steve Rogers is the star, and so he had to be the one that's getting all the good stuff and whatnot, the good scenes. But they all, the scene where Tommy Lee Jones as the general is in there with Zola, and he's eating in front of him, and just well played, very good actors. They take their part seriously, unlike a couple of actors that I've complained about in the MCU who kind of take it as a joke. Even though they were only maybe in one or two movies, they took the part seriously, and haven't badmouthed it. And down the road,
Yeah.
once they got away
They're
from it,
waiting. They're waiting until, film
yeah,
60
yeah,
to say what a terrible
yeah.
experience it was.
I think Hugo even didn't want to do it any more beyond that, which I don't blame. He's whatever, that's his choice. But yeah, I think he
I
maybe
think a big
over.
part of it was the makeup,
Hmm.
not easy to put that thing on your head for hours and hours a day
Yeah,
and do some good acting. But we got
right.
what we needed out of him. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah.
No,
So,
and like I say, I wish I could complain about it more, but I really can't.
well, thank you so much for all of your insights and your discussion on this. I really appreciate it. Moving on to our next champion for deep dive analysis, Taylor. What was your thinking, your reckoning on Captain America, the first Avenger?
I agree with Merv. This is one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. It's certainly in the top 5 solo superhero movies of all time. It's just spectacular, and the director just did a masterful job. And of course, it wasn't just him. The editing, the cinematography, the music, all extremely masterful. And what they did was, I think, Joe Johnston, watching this movie, you just think what he could have done with Rocketeer if he'd had a bigger budget like he got for this movie, because it was kind of a lot of similarities there. And The Rocketeer is a great movie as it is. But what he did was he captured the aesthetic, but not just one aesthetic, but he managed to blend all the aesthetics into this movie. He captured the time period, the 1940s, to the clothes and the cars and the hairstyles to Peggy Carter's gorgeous 1940s hairdo, and the uniforms. A lot of times you see modern movies where they're set in World War II and the uniforms just don't look like they did on actors in the 1940s at the actual time period. But in the alley fight at the beginning, where Bucky shows up in his uniform, he looked like he walked out of a movie from
Yeah.
1946, and in his he looked perfect. Um, and again, the 1940s action superhero serial is what that's where you saw superheroes in live action in the 1940s. It was in the old Saturday afternoon serials, and they managed to capture that aesthetic just extremely well too. And the comic books themselves, page to screen, they did a fantastic job of golden age comics, page to screen, as close as you could get, really, of creating that whole aesthetic without going full green screen like a Sin City or a Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, or 300, something like that, without making it a fully animated with live actors in front of it. He managed to do that with practical effects and the use of CGI and design and sets and building and everything, and they just blended it all together. It was just beautiful. It was beautiful to look at, and it just really caught the feeling of the period and the feeling of the story they were trying to tell here. The sci-fi aspects of it, the Hydra equipment looked like sci-fi machines that you would see in 1940s science fiction movies or superhero movies. That sort of almost steampunk aesthetic, that low tech, high tech. What do you say? Call it analog, analog science fiction. Uh, One of the things that makes movies great, for me anyway, and but Marvel usually does a really good job at, is just that little extra attention to detail. And this movie was just very careful about it, to everything. The design of the airplane that they had the final fight in, the Red Skull's car was gorgeous, and right down to the hood ornament, everything was just nothing was left, nothing was hand waved. Everything was just done to a T. Um, the world building, the adding to the universe. You think something set 50 years earlier, 50, 60 years earlier, couldn't really add to the universe, but it really does. The inclusion of Howard Stark, of course, was fantastic. The actor was great. They alluding to there were they found that tesseract up in Norway. Who do they worship up there in Norway, or who did they used to worship up there in Norway? Yeah, Thor. um, there was allusions to where did Howard Stark get the idea for that arc reactor thing, that permanent energy supply thing. It was all set up, and of course, the Howling Commandos are referenced later. Of course, they appear later in Agent Carter, which is a great show, and then they're referenced quite a bit in Agents of Shield. So nothing is throwaway really in this movie. So again, I really have nothing bad to say about it. I thought the action scenes were great. I thought, of course, the character development of Steve Rogers himself was perfect. The portrayal was perfect. This is Captain America. This is a guy who has self-doubt, especially, before he becomes Captain America, but even after he becomes Captain America, he's not sure exactly what to do. He knows what he wants to do, but, they tell him to go into show business and, recruit and sell bonds and stuff like that. But he doesn't feel right about it. So he ends up, taking matters into his own hands. Eventually he that's his arc, but he always wanted to do good. He wanted to contribute. He wanted to help, and he was willing to, you know, he saw the world and bigger than himself. He wanted to just contribute, and he didn't want other people doing all the risks for him, which is, of course, that is your classic hero. And he plays it, believably. He plays it like, yeah, no, no one in the real world is perfect, but I could see this guy, in the real world. He's as close as real people come to perfect, and he walked that line, without being too over the top, ridiculously corny. Every word out of his mouth is like a commercial or something like that. No, he felt like a real person doing the best he could. So again, it just all came together really, really great, and I just, like I said, when I walked out of the theater, totally happy. Um, and totally believed that I had seen one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, and they, I just can't say enough good about it. Everything was done just enough, just enough to make it perfect without going over the top, and that includes the music and the set pieces, the action scenes, the superhero stuff. He didn't, leap over tall buildings or fly or anything like that, because his power set is what it is, and they used it and utilized it and had him leverage it to make for the spectacular action scenes that we needed. And of course, the villain was perfect. And then at the end, the pulling of the heartstrings of the final tragedy of him sacrificing his life, or thought was sacrifice his life for 60 years apart, and how Peggy Carter's heart was broken and everything. Again, all just really, really well executed. I just can't think of anything bad to say about this movie. It was all, from the writing to the directing to the lighting to the costumes and the actions,
Yeah,
choreography,
the set pieces, the music.
Everything just gelled, and it was perfect setup for the Avengers.
It really was. For me, it was really the movie in the MCU where each movie before that felt like, oh, this is good, but it could be a fluke, right?
Hmm.
Okay, they got two good ones, could be a fluke. Third one, you were just kind of expecting this whole thing to kind of collapse. But by the time the first Avenger hit, I was like, okay, we're on to something. These guys have hit a formula, and I think we're going to ride this one out all the way. Um, it- you know, ceding to the fact that you don't have anything negative to say about this film, I will ask you one question before moving on to the next champion, Taylor. If Captain America, the first Avenger, were released today in the post Endgame world where we've seen quite a few superhero movies and some really great ones at this point, do you think it would be received the same way today as it was back then?
I think it might be received better today than it was back then. It actually didn't have that great of a box office. I mean, it was successful, but it wasn't massive. Um, I think now there might be a little bit more appreciation at this point. I could be wrong. It could be, oh, we've seen it before, or it's not as good as you know Morbius or some other crap we've seen in the last few years. But I don't think this. I think this movie holds up. I think this movie's timeless.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And it was a pleasure to rewatch it in preparation for this discussion. But thank you so much, Taylor, for all of your notes on that and all of your insight. Always enjoy having the discussion with you. Moving on to our next champion, Merv. What are we going to say about this film that wasn't perfect? Like, was there anything that was not executed up to the highest level of potential? Are you going to join me in this costume ramp that I have later on in terms of like this not being? And it's not that the costume was bad, not by any stretch of the imagination. It was just at some point I felt like, especially in the Hydra battle scenes, there needed to be some tailoring had to be done, right, to really get that thing. I think Chris had become really massive, and sometimes they just shrunk things a little too tight in certain places. And in any event, yeah, I know we don't want me talking forever about wardrobe. So yeah, what did you think of the film?
So, I mean, just touching on that, I do think, at least initially, the costume was a choice, a deliberate choice, because it's, the same costume he used for the Star Spangled Man dog and pony show. And that thing was deliberately, especially the mask and stuff, like it was just loose and floppy, and like he barely fit it, and it was all awkward looking and everything like that. I think that was a choice. And then his initial, whenever he goes to finally, join the fight and goes AWOL to try to free Bucky and the other 107 guys, um, it's the same outfit. He just
Yeah,
throws a leather
yeah,
jacket over it,
yep,
and steals like one of the women's cap so that he
yeah,
actually
yeah.
has a helmet, the one with the A on it. So at least initially, I think it's part of that. And who knows, maybe his nostalgia was just like, well, it worked for this mission, so I'm just gonna. It's a good luck charm, I'm just gonna wear it for the rest of the war, and nothing bad could happen. Sorry, Bucky, But no, I think I do think, at least initially, that was a choice. But yeah, I mean, later interpretations of his costume, and the 21st century version of his costume is probably a little bit more form fitting, and highlights certain aspects to his, it's America's ass, really,
Right, it
that
is.
everyone's
It is.
waiting
As
for.
was well
And there was none
established.
of that. America's pecs were in this movie, but not his ass so much.
Yep.
Just a couple comments on, before I really get into my thing, some touching on some of the other champions' comments. Uh, as far as the stinger or final scene, whatever you want to call it, back in whenever it's flash forwarding and leading into the Avengers movie, I don't know how exactly that scene is played out in the mainstream comics, but I know in the Ultimate Universe comics, where uh, this version of Nick Fury is heavily inspired from, because if you don't know this, in the mainstream MCU comics, Nick Fury is a white guy, and in the Ultimate line, he is heavily based off of Samuel Jackson as a portrait. Like, like basically took Samuel Jackson and put him in the comics before he became Nick Fury in the movies. So that was like perfect casting for like an ultimate version. But the ultimate version of Captain America, this scene is played out in a different way, where Nick Fury kind of goes and has a conversation with him, and Steve knows that it's fake because Nick Fury presents himself as a general or something, and Steve knows like one of the only generals in all of the U.S. Army who's a black guy, and he knows him on a first name basis, and he's like, he knows this is a
Yeah.
lie because there's so few black people in these higher up positions in 1943 or whatever. So I get them not wanting to go that route, but I feel like that scene is heavily inspired by that. They just took like a radio baseball game and made that tweak to that scene.
Yeah, I never
And
saw that connection, Merv, actually, but now that you say it,
yeah,
and I'm thinking about it, it makes a lot of sense. Comparing the ultimate
and
to the way they did it in the movie is actually the better comp than the normal origin.
right. And I think early on, especially once Iron Man happened and Nick Fury was Samuel Jackson, I remember a lot of the feeling being, are they going to base this newfound Marvel universe off of the Ultimate Comics version? Because those were kind of fresh at the time. It was like an updated reintroduction,
Yeah.
so that you didn't have to read 60 years worth of Captain America comics to understand who this character was in present day, which you don't have to do anyway. But it was their marketing scheme to try to get around it by creating this other universe. But it takes and borrows a lot of things from that line as well, which I've read a little bit of. Another thing that Lokismom touched on was why Hitler let Red Skull get this far along. I think it's the other way. Why did at this point in this movie, it's really Red Skull who has the power, and he's just letting Hitler search for trinkets in the desert as he it's at this moment, especially when he betrays the other like Nazis in the room, that he really says, nope, it's Hydra now. Forget about Nazi Germany, it's Hydra is the world power. And I really think that's the point, is like he's now stronger than Hitler at this point, because he decides to break away from he was just using the Nazis as a stepping stone. Just getting into there's not much left to say as far as it hasn't already been touched on, but the one thing I really liked about this movie, especially in my recent rewatches, I don't know if I felt this way on my initial rewatch back in 2010 or 11, whenever this movie came out, but the breaking up of the story of essentially Steve Rogers, it's almost split down the middle, using the Star Spangled Man like 5-minute montage as like a breaking point, where it's Steve becoming the soldier and then Steve acting as a soldier like after that. In him becoming the soldier, I forgot how much of the movie it takes up, like the boot camp and Tommy Lee Jones's character, which is awesome, and him meeting Peggy and going through the facility, jumping on the grenade, which is another awesome Steve Rogers moment. It's that I think in every rewatch is like more becoming my favorite part. I love seeing skinny Steve, not necessarily because he looks great, which he doesn't look bad, but he, there's really awkward, every time I
It's a
forget
little
about
disturbing.
how
They
big of his
really
head
went
is.
full, no musculature whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just weird because you know what Chris Evans looks like, and it just doesn't look right. But like I really love the boot camp sequences, essentially. Him going through basic training and stuff like that, and showing that really he's failing at everything except being like the greatest guy in the world, and that's all that really qualifies him for being a super soldier, is his heart's in the right place. It's the exact, the only thing that really ties him to that program. And then his chase sequence for the assassin,
Yeah.
whenever he first newly becomes Captain America, and he can't even control, like he's running faster than he's ever run in his life, and he's like running into cars and smashing into walls and stuff, and he's just like, I don't understand what's going on, like my body is peak physical human. So that was pretty awesome. And then obviously later you get the action sequences with the Howling Commandos and the train sequence and everything like that, and the airplane. It's a really great ride, all in all. if there's any mild criticism I'd have, it's that, like, especially some of the Howling Commandos, which I remember whenever this movie was announced and the Howling Commandos were in it, especially you could recognize Dum Dum Dugan from a mile away, because of his bowler cap. But whenever I saw that they were in it, I was like, oh, I'm really excited to see, them as like a war squad. And outside of the montage and a couple scenes, like, they felt, kind of on the back burner. They were there, but really, really supportive. Like some of the Howling Commandos, I couldn't even tell you their names or like anything about them. They were just like kind of stereotypical black guy, Asian guy. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how it felt, unfortunately.
And some of those guys were, really, good actors who were fairly well
Yeah,
established at the time, but they kind of got the short end of the stick in terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the commando by the name of, I think it's Gabe Jones, and I forget the actor who plays him, but that guy is a very talented at the time up and coming actor, and I was like, oh, it'd be great if we saw him again at some point, but we never do.
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure they're great and they're cool characters in their own. And with a film that is this packed with supporting roles that are very memorable across the board, like those are the only ones that I kind of wish we had a little bit more time with. But I don't know, especially with how long this movie already is, what you cut instead, because I wouldn't want to take anything away from Steve and Peggy's relationship, which is really like a huge chunk and heart of this movie. Steve and Bucky's relationship, all the boot camp stuff, all the Red Skull stuff, which you could argue there could even be more Red Skull stuff squeezed in here if you wanted to. I don't know what you cut to buff those guys up a little bit. I wouldn't want to take anything out. So outside of this movie being 4 hours long, like you just have to live with some characters aren't going to get as much shine as others. That's really, I mean, the only criticism I can think of, and even that's like, I get it. There's only so much time in the movie to explore all these characters. Somebody's got to get the shaft, outside of being background extras. So everything else, I mean, I pretty much agree with what everyone said. Like this movie, top to bottom, front to back, is just an excellent ride. It's a fantastic origin, and I think it explains so much. Every time you rewatch it, it explains so much how, like, why people fell in love with Steve Rogers so much. Like, he's this character in all of his interpretations, down the line. Even if this wasn't your first exposure to Captain America, Steve Rogers, like, he's this character. He's such a good guy. And you root for him so much throughout all this stuff, and his heart's always in the right place. And I think, again, the strength of this film especially is him and Peggy's relationship, which is everlasting. That's a theme that'll be brought up later in the MCU. And then him and Bucky is another huge strength, which, I love that the roles kind of reverse as the movie goes on. Like at the beginning, it's Bucky protecting Steve from harm, and towards the
And
end,
then,
it's
yeah, we
Steve
switch
unfortunately
sides.
failing to protect Bucky from harm. But that relationship, that brotherly bond, is there throughout, obviously, the rest of their lifetimes. So this is an excellent film. I love it more every single time I see it. It probably won't beat out the Avengers as far as a phase one movie goes
That's our next
ever,
one.
just because that that movie is so good. But it's beat out every other one, every other solo story in phase one, or even the sequel Iron Man 2. It's my favorite outside of the Avengers in phase one. It's excellent film.
Indeed, high praise. So there we have it. The champions have sounded off on what is probably one of the most beloved entries in the MCU. I think we can all agree that the first Avenger really set the cornerstone for this cinematic universe, and we have nothing left to do but let the champions turn in their ratings for this particular entry. And Grandmaster, the detail falls to you. On a 1 to 10 scale, what do you give Captain America, the first Avenger?
Okay. One detail that is not so much bothering me, but I thought was really funny, is that they paint the name of the cities the bomb is supposed to drop on the bomb. Uh, I'm not a military man, but I cannot imagine they take the time to paint the name of the bomb, the name of the city on the bomb where they were going to throw it.
I
But
can tell
anyway,
you that from a little, not the name of the city, but something's always going to get painted on a bomb
Okay.
in terms of a label.
Okay. Well, like I say, I have no experience with that. But as far as a rating goes, yeah, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
All right. All right. Yeah.
And you know that I've been, how you say it, grading on the scale because of what's to come. If I give this a 9 out of 10, you know how I feel about this movie.
Yeah. I was just about to say, we can't wait for some of your future grades if this one's getting a 9. There's some 10s in the future. I see them. But moving on to Taylor, what is your grade 1 to 10 for the first Avenger?
Like I said, this movie was fantastic in every detail, right down to the end credits with the old World War II posters that they used in the end credits with the music playing. Was all wonderful. So yeah, 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. You heard it here, guys. That's pretty high praise. Loki's mom, what do you think? 1 to 10 or the first Avenger?
Just a quick follow up. There's a movie, a classic John Ford movie. I think he made right after World War II called "They Were Expendable." The final scene where John Wayne is saying goodbye to his love, played by Donna Reed. That's almost the same scene because they're on the phone in they were expendable and saying goodbye to each other without saying goodbye to each other. And so yeah, that it just I just remembered that and I wanted to add it because I do love it when they these old Hollywood style illusions and like I said to the Indiana Jones, these little dinks, whatever you want to call them, I appreciate that. So I just wanted to bring that out. My rating is going to be a 9.
9 out of 10. Okay. And last but certainly not least, Merv, we need to get your grade to make it official. What do you think?
Real quick, I'll share a conspiracy headcanon that I have, which probably isn't unique to me, but Laura Haddock, the actress, plays the autograph seeker during the Star Spangled Man sequence. And she goes on later to play Meredith Quill, who is
Oh, yes.
Ego's love interest in
Good
Guardians
catch.
of the Galaxy 2 in the 60s, who gives birth to Peter,
Peter Quill.
Star-Lord.
Yeah.
So based on how they were looking at each other, I'm just going to assume that Steve Rogers and this autograph seeker had relations. And then out of that came Meredith Quill. So that would make Captain America Star-Lord's grandfather,
Oh wow!
I guess, if
Well,
the timelines line up.
Merv,
Now,
the relations were confirmed in She-Hulk, but James Gunn himself has debunked the story about Meredith Quill being Steve Rogers' daughter.
Oh, did he?
I'm sorry,
yeah,
because her father is actually in the movies, huh? So
I assume none of that's true, but I like to imagine that it's true, and it helps me personally.
Of all the
If I can
headcanon
believe
floating out there,
So,
I accept it.
yeah. But aside from that, 9 out of 10. This is an extremely solid movie, especially as early as Phase 1. That's fantastic.
Wow. 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Yeah, it's an incredible movie. I would also have to give it something like a 9.5 out of 10 myself. It's just a good night out at the movies, and it really stands the test of time. And as we know, when we go forward with the saga, they managed to retroactively slot it into the Infinity Saga incredibly well by transforming the Tesseract into an Infinity Stone. So there you have it. There's not much more you can ask for from an MCU movie. This is just one of the greatest of the entire series. So with that, parting is such sweet sorrow, but I would like to thank my panel of champions, Merv, Grandmaster, Loki's mom, Taylor, for just helping us to unfreeze this wartime classic. I'd like to thank the folks at home who are listening. I hope you guys are doing okay and doing well during these strange times. Um, yeah, we want to encourage you to find us on social media. Again, that's X and it's on Facebook. Of course, you can always find us here We want to encourage you to like, to subscribe, to drop a few comments in if you agree or disagree with anything that you hear us saying. And stay tuned because we've got more coming up in the Infinity Saga series. We just released also a review on Superman, and we're going to be doing an upcoming review on the Fantastic Four when that drops in a week. And we're also doing deep dives into retro Star Trek. So you are going to want to catch all of that stuff. So make sure to hit subscribe and grab the notifications, do all the things. So, that being said, the price of freedom is high, but this podcast costs you nothing. Until next time, stay super, stay strange, and stay worthy.